Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji and Mataji, Dhanavad pranams. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much for joining. Anybody wants to read this today's Japa quote, Srila Prabhupada's quote?
Yes, Lord. Today's quote by Srila Prabhupada. Yes, somebody is reading now.
Read. Prabhu.
Yeah, today's quote by Srila Prabhupada. If you remember Krishna, that is also seeing spirit. 1 second. Seeing spiritual. Seeing does not mean simply to see by the eyes. Spiritually seeing means by chanting you can see, by describing you can see, because Krishna is absolute. Absolute. What is this? Shravanani Kirtana Vishnu Smarana Pada Sevana. Either of these items, either you can hear of Krishna, then you can see, you are seeing Krishna. When you chant about Krishna, then you are seeing Krishna. When you are thinking of Krishna, you are seeing Krishna. This is the process. This is called Bhakti Yoga. Hare Krishna. Lecture 21/4/1974, Hyderabad.
Hyderabad. This was in Hyderabad, Radha Madan Mohan Temple. 1974. 1974. Now, how many years back? This one, 1974. Minus 20. 48 years back. He was present there in Hyderabad. So that's the thing. Krishna only gives the rice with the chanting the holy names of the God. Another way of understanding is, this is Prabhupada words, right? All the devotional practice ultimately not materialize. Actually, doesn't mean simply to see by the eyes. Through ear we can see Krishna, right? To remember we can see Krishna. See, this is this material eyes, blunt senses. Sometimes Prabhupada writes in his purports, blunt senses. Blunt senses means limited perception. You cannot see what's happening beyond this wall. That's where spiritual practices are on transcendental platform. We can experience. We can see Krishna. So that's how many times he is written. We can see Krishna through different practices. Shavanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. And simple. This is called Bhakti Yoga. Very easy to understand and very easy to practice. Right. So that's a thing. Yes. Let us start with Mangalacharana prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we are reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, chapter 5, entitled as the glories of Lord Nityananda Balarama. The glories of Lord Nityananda Balarama. So we are here in this it's a very big purport of 41st verse of 5th chapter Adi Leela. We completed up to this paragraph. Let me read this one and over to you, Prabhuji. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the Lord, being equally disposed toward every living being, has no enemies and no friends, but that he has special affection for a devotee who always thinks of him in love. Remember that he is not, partial, but he is partial for devotees because they're always thinking about Krishna. Never forgets. Therefore, neutrality and partiality are both among the transcendental qualities of the Lord, and they are properly adjusted by his inconceivable energy. The Lord is Parabrahman, or the source of the impersonal Brahma, which is his all-pervading feature of neutrality. In his personal feature, however, as the owner of all transcendental opulences, the Lord displays his partiality by taking the side of his devotees. Partiality, neutrality, and all such qualities are present in God. Otherwise, they could not be experienced in the creation. Since he is the total existence, all things are properly adjusted in the absolute. In the relative world, such qualities are displayed in a perverted manner, and therefore we experience non-duality as a perverted reflection. Because there is no logic to explain how things happen in the real realm of spirit, the Lord is sometimes described as being beyond the range of experience. Beyond the range of experience means limited senses, limited sense perception. Yeah. But if we simply accept the Lord's inconceivability, we can then adjust all things in Him. Non-devotees cannot understand the Lord's inconceivable energy, and consequently for them, it is said that He is beyond the range of conceivable expression. The author of the Brahma Sutras accepts this fact and says, Shrutestu Shabda Moolatvat. Shrutestu Shabda Moolatvat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, being inconceivable to an ordinary man, can be understood only through the evidence of the Vedic injunctions. This Skanda Purana confirms Achintya Khalu Ye Bhava Natam Starkena Yojayet. Matters inconceivable to a common man should not be a subject for argument. We find very wonderful qualities even in such material things as jewels and drugs. Indeed, their qualities often appear inconceivable. Therefore, if we do not attribute inconceivable potency to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we cannot establish His supremacy. It is because of these inconceivable potencies that the glories of Lord have always been accepted as difficult to understand. Arthur, you can read.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Ignorance and the jugglery of words are very common in human society, but they do not help one understand the inconceivable energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we accept such ignorance and word jugglery, we cannot accept the Supreme Lord's perfection in 6 opulences. For example, one of the opulences of the Supreme Lord is complete knowledge. Therefore, how could ignorance be conceivable in him? Vedic instructions and sensible arguments establish that the Lord's maintaining the cosmic manifestation and simultaneously being indifferent to the activities of its maintenance cannot be contradictory because of his inconceivable energies. To a person who is always absorbed in the thoughts of snakes, a rope always appears to be a snake. And similarly, to a person bewildered by material qualities and devoid of knowledge of the absolute, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears according to diverse bewildered conclusions. Someone might argue that the absolute would be affected by duality if he were both all cognizance Brahman and the personality of Godhead with 6 opulences in full Bhagavan. To refute such an argument, the aphorism Swarupa Dvayam Ikshate declares that in spite of appearances, there is no chance of duality in the absolute, for he is but one in diverse manifestations. Understanding that the absolute displays varied pastimes by the influence of his energies at once removes the apparent incongruity of his inconceivably opposite energies. Srimad Bhagavatam 3.4.16 gives the following description of the inconceivable potency of the Lord. Karmani anas anihasya भावो भवस्यते दुर्गाश्रयोत्तरी भयात् पलायनम् कालात्मनो यत् प्रमदा युताश्रयाः स्वत्मान् रते किद्यादिधीर्विदम् इहा. Shall I read, Prabhuji?
Yeah, read, Mother. You can read this translation and yes.
Okay, Prabhuji. Although the personality of Godhead has nothing to do, he nevertheless acts. Although he is always unborn, he nevertheless takes birth. Although he is time fearful to everyone, he flees Madhura in fear of his enemy to take shelter in a fort. And although he is self-sufficient, he marries 16,000 women. These pastimes seem like bewildering contradictions even to the most intelligent. Had these activities of the Lord not been a reality, sages would not have been puzzled by them. Therefore, such activity should never be considered imaginary. Whenever the Lord desires his inconceivable energy, Yogamaya serves him in creating and performing such pastimes. The
Thank you,
scriptures,
Mother.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mother. Sandhya Mata, you want to read?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, please read.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. The scriptures known as Pancharatra Shastras are recognized Vedic scriptures that have been accepted by the great acharyas. These scriptures are not products of the modes of passion and ignorance. Learned scholars and brahmanas therefore always refer to them as Satvata Samhitas. The original speaker of these scriptures is Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is especially mentioned in the Moksha Dharma 349.68, which is part of the Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata. Liberated sages like Narada and Vyasa, who are free from the 4 defects of conditioned souls, are the propagators of these scriptures. Sri Narada Muni is the original speaker of the Pancharatra Shastra. Srimad Bhagavatam is also considered as a Satvata Samhita. Indeed, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declared Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam. Srimad Bhagavatam is a spotless Purana. Malicious editors and scholars who attempt to misrepresent the Pancharatra Shastras to refute their regulations are most abominable. In the modern age, such malicious scholars have been commented misleadingly upon the Bhagavad Gita, which was spoken by Krishna, to prove that there is no Krishna. How the Mayavadis have misrepresented the Pancharatrika Vidhi will be shown below.
You can
Shall I
read this one. Yeah, continue with this one.
In commenting on Vedanta Sutra 2.2.42, Sri Pada Shankarshana is a jiva, ordinary living entity, but there is no evidence in any Vedic scriptures that devotees of the Lord have ever said that Shankarshana is an ordinary living entity. He is an infallible plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the Vishnu category, and he is beyond the creation of material nature. He is the original source of the living entities. The Upanishads declare Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. He is the supreme living entity among all the living entities. Therefore, he is Vibhu Chaitanya, the greatest. He is directly the cause of the cosmic manifestation and the infinitesimal living beings. He is the infinite living entity, and ordinary living entities are infinitesimal. I don't know. Therefore, he is never to be considered an ordinary living being, for that would be against the conclusion of the authorized scriptures. The living entities are also beyond the limitations of birth and death. This is a version of the Vedas, and it is accepted by those who follow scriptural injunctions and who have actually descended in the disciplic succession. In answer,
Thank you.
okay, Prabhu.
He's given this 1, 2, 3, 4. Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you for reading. Lavish Prabhu, please read.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Second, in answer to
second.
Shankar commentary on Vedanta Sutra 2.2.43, it must be said that original Vishnu of all the Vishnu categories, which are disturbed in several ways, is Mula Sankarshana. Mula means the original, Sankarshana is also Vishnu, but from him all other Vishnus expand. This is confirmed in Brahma Samhita 5.46, wherein it is said that just as a flame transferred from another flame acts like the original, so the Vishnus who emanate from the Mula Sankarshana are as good as the original Vishnu. One should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, who thus expands himself. Uh, in reply to the in reply to the commentary of Shankaracharya on the 44th aphorism, it may be said that no pure devotees strictly follow the principles of Panchatattva will ever accept the statement that all the expansions of Vishnu are different identities. For this idea is completely false. Even Sripad Shankaracharya, in his commentary on the 42nd aphorism, has accepted that the personality of Godhead can automatically expand himself variously. Therefore, his commentary on the 42nd aphorism of his commentary on the 44th aphorism are contradictory. It is a defect of Mayavada commentaries that they may one statement in one place and a contradictory statement in another place, as a tactic to refute the Bhagavata school. Thus, Mayavadi commenters do not even follow regulative principles. It should be noted that the Bhagavata school accepts the quadruple forms of Narayana, but that does not mean that it accepts many gods. Devotees know perfectly well that the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is one without a second. They are never pantheist worshippers of many gods, for this is against the injunction of the Vedas. Devotees completely believe with strong faith that Narayana is transcendental and has inconceivable proprietorship of various transcendental potencies. We therefore recommend that scholars consult the Laghu Bhagavatamrita of Srila Rupa Goswami, where these ideas are explicitly stated. Sripad Shankaracharya has tried to prove that Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha expand through cause and effect. He has compared them with earth and earthen pots. That is completely ignorant. However, for there is no such thing as cause and effect in their expansions. Nanyat yat sad asat param. The Kurma Purana also confirms. Deha dehi vibhedo yam neshvarte vidyate kvachit. There is no difference between the body and soul in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Cause and effect are material. For example, it is seen that a father's body is the cause of the son's body, but the soul is neither cause nor effect. On the spiritual platform, there are none of the differences we find in the cause and effect, since all the forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are spiritually supreme. They are equal controllers of material nature. Standing on the fourth dimension, they are predominating figures of the transcendental platform. There is no trace of material contamination in their expressions because material laws cannot influence them. There is no such rule as cause and effect outside of the material world. Therefore, the understanding of cause and effect cannot approach the full transcendental, complete expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vedic literature proves this. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. The personality of God is perfect and complete, and because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as the phenomenal work, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete by itself, because he is the complete whole. Even though so many complete unit emanates from him, he remains a complete balance. Brihad Aranya Nishad 5.1. It is most apparent that non-devotees violate the rules and regulations of devotion service to equate the whole cosmic manifestation, which is the eternal feature of Vishnu, with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the controller of Maya, or with his quadruple expansions, equating Maya with the Spirit or Maya with the Lord, is a sign of atheism. The cosmic creation, which manifests life in forms from Brahma to the end, is the external feature of the Supreme Lord. It comprises 1/4 of Lord's energy as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita ekamshena sthito jagat. The cosmic manifestation of the illusory energy is material nature, and everything within material nature is made of matter. Therefore, one should not try to compare the expansions of material nature to the Chaturvyuha, the quadruple expansions of the personality of Godhead, but unfortunately, the Mayavadi school unreasonably attempts to do this.
Thank you, Prabhu. Simple, Prabhu. All these descriptions states that Krishna's body always spiritual body, not material contaminated bodies. All these expansions also, right? Chaturvyuha means Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. So all are spiritual bodies. But here, all these descriptions to understand, to give clarifications, to understand properly how the Mayavadi philosophers, like, Sripad Shankaracharya propagates this Mayavadi philosophy. So they won't accept, they have different understanding. But as we are, Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya and Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, explain so clearly, these are the proper understandings of, everything. See, Om Purnamadam, Purnamadam means everything comes from Krishna is complete. Then complete means is spiritual. That's where he cannot. So even though he appeared in the material world, he appeared as a spiritual form, Sachidananda Vigraha, and he can control everything. So he cannot go beyond the up to 25 years. He looks like young boy. We never see Krishna as an old man, like, not like that. Krishna always Nava Yavvanamcha. That's where he's a transcendental personality, he's transcendental body, right? So this is our proper understanding. So they have contradictory statements. Prabhupada says in the 42nd aphorism different, 44th aphorism is different. The contradictory statements to bewilder, and there are different conclusions. But here, pretty much clarification is given by Srila Prabhupada and quoting proper verses. Om Purnamadam Purnamadam Purnamadachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Everything in relates to Krishna is complete. Simple. Complete, and it's a spiritual. Whenever Krishna appears in this material world, he appears as a spiritual form, not material bodies like, change, 6 changes, not like that. That's a proper understanding. So all these 4 quadruple forms, Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha are spiritual forms only. Yeah. Different expansions. Yeah. Nakinja Prabhu, please read. Yeah.
To answer Shankaracharya's commentary on Vedanta Sutra 2.2.45, the substance of the transcendental qualities and their spiritual nature is described in the Laghu Bhagavata Dvareta, Purva 5.208 to 214, as follows. Some say that transcendence must be void of all qualities, because qualities are manifested only in the matter. According to them, all the qualities are like temporary, flickering mirages. But this is not acceptable. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is absolute, his qualities are non-different from him. His form, name, qualities, and everything else pertaining to him are as spiritual as he is. Every qualitative expansion of the absolute personality of Godhead is identical with him. Since the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead is the reservoir of all pleasures. All the transcendental qualities that expand from him are also reservoirs of pleasures. This is confirmed in the scripture known as Brahma Tarka, which states that the Supreme Lord Hari is qualified by himself, and therefore Vishnu and his pure devotees and their transcendental qualities cannot be different from the persons. In the Vishnu Purana, Lord Vishnu is worshipped in the following words: Let the Supreme Personality of Godhead be merciful towards us. His existence is never affected by material qualities. In the same Vishnu Purana, it is also said that all the qualities attributed attributed to the Supreme Lord, such as the knowledge, opulence, beauty, strength, and influence as are known to be non-different from him. This is also confirmed in Padma Purana, which explains that whenever the Supreme Lord is described as having no qualities, these should be understood to indicate that he is devoid of material qualities. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.16.29, it is said, O Dharma, protector of religious principles, all the noble and sublime qualities are eternally manifested in the person of Krishna, and devotees and transcendentalists who aspire to become faithful also desire to possess such transcendental qualities. It is therefore to be understood that Lord Krishna, the transcendental form of absolute bliss, is the fountainhead of all pleasurable transcendental qualities and inconceivable potencies. In this connection, we may recommend the references Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, chapter 26, verses 21, 25, 27, and 28.
Prabhupada ki jai. He wanted to defeat their philosophy. He's quoting from different verses. Great. Let me read. Sripada Ramanujacharya is also refuted. Ramanujacharya ki jai. Sripada Ramanujacharya has also refuted the arguments of Shankara. The arguments of Shankara means Shankaracharya in his own commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, which is known as the Sri Bhashya. They read this Sri Bhashyam. Sripada Shankaracharya has tried to equate the Pancharatras with the philosophy of the atheist Kapila. And thus he has tried to prove that the Pancharatra contradict the Vedic injunctions. The Pancharatra state that the personality of Jiva, called Sankarshana, has emerged from Vasudeva, the supreme cause of all causes. That Pradyumna, the mind, has come from Sankarshana, and that Aniruddha, the ego, has come from Pradyumna. But one cannot say that the living entity, Jiva, takes birth or is created. For such a statement is against the injunction of the Vedas. As stated in the Kathopanishad 2.18, living entities as individual spiritual souls, living entities as individual spiritual souls, can have neither birth nor death. All Vedic literature declares that the living entities are eternal. Therefore, when it is, see which one? See all. I'm remembering the verse. What is that? Living entities never, as individual spiritual souls, can have neither birth nor death. Mamai Vamsho, Jiva Loka, Jiva Bhuta, Sanatana. Sanatana means eternal. There is no birth, there is no death. Mamai Vamsho, we are all come from Krishna. Mamai Vamsho, Jiva Loka, Jiva Bhuta, Sanatana. We are eternal. Our body is temporary, but we are eternal. We means our soul is eternal, which connect specific particular relationship with Krishna. Mamai Vamsho, Krishna himself says in the Bhagavad Gita, this one. Mamai Vamsho, Jiva Loka, Jiva Bhuta, Sanatana. We come from Krishna. That is a proof. Krishna himself says, our eternal Father. Aham Bija Pradapita. I am seed-giving Father. Seed-giving Father means the soul comes from Krishna himself. Yeah. That's why we are eternal connection, eternal relationship with Krishna. That's where the Krishna consciousness process is to regain, to re-establish our relationship with Krishna. Right? Yeah. All Vedic literature declares that the living entities are eternal. Mamai Vamsa Jiva Loka Jiva. Same. Therefore, when it is said that Shankaracharya is Jiva, Sankarshana is Jiva, this indicates that he is the predominating deity of the living entities. Similarly, Pradyumna is a predominating deity of the mind, and Aniruddha is a predominating deity of the ego. It has been said that the Pradyumna, the mind, was produced from Sankarshana. But if Sankarshana were a living entity, this could not be accepted, because a living entity cannot be the cause of the mind. The Vedic injunctions state that everything, including life, mind, and the senses, comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is impossible for the mind to be produced by a living entity. Jiva cannot be produced mind. For the Vedas state that everything comes from the absolute truth, the Supreme Lord. Very good. Yeah. Let us read this paragraph and we will conclude. Anybody wants to read? Mataji sir, please.
I'll read, Prabhuji.
Yeah, please read.
Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha have all the potent features of the absolute personality of Godhead. According to the revealed scriptures, which contain undeniable facts that no one can refute. Therefore, these members of the quadruple manifestation are never to be considered ordinary living beings. Each of them is a plenary expansion of the absolute Godhead, and thus each is identical with the Supreme Lord in knowledge, opulence, energy, influence, prowess, and potencies. The evidence of the Pancharatras cannot be neglected. Only untrained persons who have not genuinely studied the Pancharatras think that the Pancharatras contradict the Shrutis regarding the birth or beginning of the living entity. In this connection, we must accept the verdict of Srimad Bhagavatam, which says the absolute personality of Godhead, who is known as Vasudeva and who is very affectionate toward his surrendered devotees, expand himself in quadruple forms who are subordinate to him and at the same time identical with him in all respects. The Paushkara Samhita states the scriptures that recommend that Brahmanas worship the quadruple forms of the supreme personality of Godhead are called agamas, authorized Vedic literatures. In all Vaishnava literature, it is said that worshipping these quadruple forms is as good as worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, who in his different expansions complete in 6 opulences can accept offerings from his devotee of the result of their prescribed duties. Worshipping the expansions for pastimes such as Nrsimha, Rama, Sesha, and Kurma promotes one to the worship of the Sankarshana quadruple. From that position, one is raised to the platform of worshipping Vasudeva, the supreme Brahman. In the Paushkara Samhita, it is said, if the one fully worship according to the regulative principles, one can attain the supreme personality of Godhead Vasudeva. It is to be accepted that Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha are as good as Lord Vasudeva, for they all have inconceivable power and can accept transcendental forms like Vasudeva. Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha are never born, but they can manifest themselves in various incarnations before the eyes of pure devotees. This is the conclusion of all Vedic literature, that the Lord can manifest himself before his devotees by his inconceivable power is not against the teaching of the Pancharatras. Since Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha are respectively the predominating deities of all living entities, the total mind and the total ego, the designation of Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha as Jiva, mind, and ego is never contradictory to the statements of the scriptures. These terms identifies these deities, just as the terms sky and light sometimes identify the absolute Brahman.
Thank you, Mataji. Actually, can we complete Prabhuji's Mataji? Only a couple of paragraphs.
Yes, Prabhu, yes.
Yeah. Sandhya Mata, you want to read?
Yes, Prabhuji. The scriptures completely deny the birth or production of the living entity. In the Parama Samhita, it is described that material nature, which is used for others' purposes, is factually inert and always subject to transformation. The field of material nature is the arena of the activities of fruitive actors, and since the material field is externally related with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is also eternal. In every Samhita, the Jiva, living entity, has been accepted as eternal, and in the Pancharatras, the birth of the Jivas is completely denied. Anything that is produced must also be annihilated. Therefore, if we accept the birth of the living entity, we also have to accept its annihilation. But since the Vedic literatures say that the living entity is eternal, one should not think the living being to be produced at a certain time. In the beginning of the Parama Samhita, it is definitely stated that the phase of material nature is constantly changeable. Therefore, beginning, annihilation, and all such terms are applicable only in the material nature. Considering all these points, one should understand that Shankaracharya's statement that Shankarshana is born as a jiva is completely against the Vedic statements. His assertions are completely refuted by the above arguments. In this connection, the commentary of Sridhara Swami on Srimad Bhagavatam 3.1.34 is very helpful. For a detailed refutation of Shankaracharya's arguments attempting to prove Shankarshana an ordinary living being, one may refer to Srimad Sudarshanacharya's commentary on the Sri Bhasya, which is known as the Shruta Prakashika. The virginal shall I continue, Prabhuji?
Yeah, you can complete this. Yes.
The virginal quadruple forms Krishna, Baladeva, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha expand into another quadruple, which is present in the Vaikuntha planets of the spiritual sky. Therefore, the quadruple forms in the spiritual sky are the second manifestation of the original quadruple in Dwaraka. As explained above, Vasudeva, Shankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha are all changeless, transcendental plenary expansions of the Supreme Lord who have no relation to the material modes. The Sankarsana form in the second quadruple is not only a representation of Balarama, but also the original cause of the casual ocean, where Karanodaka Sai Vishnu lies asleep, breathing out the seeds of innumerable universes.
Yes, Mother. Thank you so much, Mother.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Kinchan Prabhu. Read this. You
Hare
read
Krishna.
completely.
In the spiritual sky, there is a spiritual creative energy technically called as Suddha Sattva, which is a pure spiritual energy that sustains all the Vaikuntha planets with the full opulence of knowledge, wealth, prowess, etc. All these actions of Shuddha Sattva displays the potency of Mahashankarshana, who is the ultimate reservoir of all the individual living entities who are suffering in the material world. When the cosmic creation is annihilated, the living entities who are indestructible by nature rest in the body of Sankarshana. Sankarshana is therefore sometimes called as total jiva. As spiritual sparks, the living entities have the tendency to be inactive in the association of the material energy, just as the sparks of the fire have the tendency to extinguish as soon as they leave the fire. The spiritual nature of living being can be rekindled, however, in the association with the Supreme Being. Because the living being can appear either in the matter or in the spirit, the jiva is called the marginal potency. Because this living entity can appear either in the matter or in the spirit, the jiva is called okay. Sankarsana is the origin of Karana Vishnu, who is the original form, who creates the universe, and that Sankarsana is but the plenary expansion of Sri Nityananda Ram.
Haribol. Haribol. Haribol.
What is this last one, Prabhuji? Is plenary expansion of Nityananda Ram?
See, nothing but see, Nityananda Prabhu is the expansion of Nityananda represents spiritual master. Nityananda represents Adishesha. Nityananda represents nothing, no difference. It's a Balarama. Sankarshana expansion. Next second expansion of
But Sankarshana is equal to Karnataka issue, Prabhuji.
From Sankarshana again creates the another.
I'll tell the understanding. Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha.
Yes.
Sankarshana is Balarama, who is also Karnodaksha Vishnu or Mahavishnu also. Right? Then Pradyumna is Shirodaksha Vishnu. No. Last one
No,
is
not like
no. Aniruddha is Shirodaksha Vishnu.
See,
Here Mahavishnu is said, no, where Mahasankarshana, Mahavishnu. This is getting confused actually. That
Sankarshana form in the second quarter is not only representation of Balarama, but also the original cause of the cause of causal ocean. Karana.
Yes, that is
The
Karnodaksha
Karno,
Vishnu. Yeah.
that's come from
Yeah,
Balaram.
Karnodaksha Vishnu is Sankarshana, Pradyumna is Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and Aniruddha is Shirodaksha Vishnu. So Sankarshana is also Mahavishnu, Prabhuji.
So this is what is Mahasankarshana. What Prabhu? Sankarshana?
Sankarshana is also known as Mahavishnu.
From that Sankarshan expansion only we see Mahavishnu, right? Mahavishnu. Yes.
So Sankarshana is equal to Mahavishnu, is also Karnodaksha Vishnu, is also Balrama,
Yes.
right?
He also
So this
Balrama,
one
he also Nityananda. Yes,
Nityananda.
second expansion. Second
This is correct,
expansion.
Prabhuji, understanding?
Okay. This
Okay.
one. Here Prabhupada writes Krishna Baladeva. Krishna Baladeva, same Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. Expand into another quadruple. See, another quadruple means another 4 Chaturvya form. Okay. Which is present in the Vaikuntha planets of the spiritual sky. Therefore, quadruple forms in the spiritual sky are the second manifestation of the original quadruple in Dwaraka.
Yeah,
From
in
there only.
Vaikuntha, everyone has the 400 forms. No, even if Jiva goes to Vaikuntha, they will get 4 hands. If somebody aims at Vaikuntha and the perfected lives and reaches Vaikuntha, they'll attend the Narayan form, Vishnu form, with 4 hands and all. That is what we'll told here. If we are going to Goloka, we'll have again we'll be Jiva with 200 like Krishna only. But if somebody like Sri Vaishnavas, if they aim at a Vaikuntha, they'll have 400 forms like Vishnu actually.
So which one want to you go? Where
I
do you
want
want
only
to go?
200 from.
So all of you, which one, where do you want to go? 400 farm or 200 farm? 400 farm means you have to hold 4 things at a time.
All Matajis want 4.
Yeah. They they multitasking, right? So that become easy then when they get 4 hands. one hand cooking, one hand cleaning. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for reading. It's all technical things is given. Prabhupada 41 verses is a big. He's refuted all the Mayavad philosophy. Right? The correct understanding, like Sankarshana is not a jiva, and which is under the modes of material nature. No, Sankarshana is also eternal. It's come from Krishna only, and it's expansion. Like this way, this is the thing. Vasudeva is Ishvara, Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sankarshana represents Jiva, but he is eternal. Jiva also eternal, right? The soul is also eternal. And Pradyumna represents mind. Mind, all the Jivas. Ego, that is Aniruddha. That's the technical things. But all are eternal only. As Jiva also eternal. Right? Jiva means soul. The soul is eternal. Right? So
Ego means true ego might be. It might be the true
ego
ego.
means true ego. Mind
That is the
also.
term.
Yeah.
How to understand mind?
Yeah, mind also. See, without mind we cannot do anything. But mind your mind. There is a statement. Mind your mind means put in right things. Mind place in right things. If you put in different things, you get bad karma, and you have to dissolve that bad karma in different bodies. That's a use your mind, intelligence, all the senses, gross senses and subtle senses, using for the pleasure of Krishna. Then that mind
And
also.
intelligence is a good, nice word, right, Prabhuji?
Intelligence, that's right. See,
in the sense higher than
final.
mind, no? Intelligence is above mind, no? So
yeah, above mind. Yes. Intelligence above mind. There only we get the discrimination power. We have to train intelligence properly by putting proper engagement, by by keeping ourselves in proper engagements.
feeding a good dog.
Good dog. So that's the thing. Mind, intelligence, false ego, and all this beyond this. Soul is the powerful. Soul is powerful. Beyond the gross and subtle senses, soul is the most powerful. And whatever activities connects to soul, automatically all other senses also can be purified. That's why the soul activities. Bhakti yoga is soul connected activities. We are performing chanting, japa. We are performing. This is activity: reading, understanding scriptures, reading, associating with devotees. These are all soul connected activities, right, Prabhu? So eventually, everything will be purified. Body will be purified, subtle senses also purified. We become pure devotees. Continuous process, continuous, regular, uninterrupted, unmotivated, pure devotional service. Prabhupada writes, right? Pure devotional service. We have activity. We are not like robots. Right? We have dynamic activities, not static activities. Everything connects with Krishna dynamic. Chalo. Thank you so much. Again, Prabhuji and Mataji, Dandat Pranams, Vancha Kalpatarubhischa, Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Anta Koti Vaishnavavrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada Transcendental Book Reading ki jai. Hitai Gaura Hari Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Have a happy Krishna conscious day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Same time.